Hey everyone, what's going on? This video is going to be kind of a follow-up to this other video right here that I haven't uploaded yet, or I haven't put on YouTube yet, and the only reason why is because I wanted to kind of make this video and put them up at the same time, but I actually made that video, I started it like 5 days ago, and I've just had some bad juju going on in my life lately. There's so many things, I'm telling you, I don't know how karma works, but I'm telling you, ever since I gave this homeless guy a ride about a month ago, three of my cars have broke down. My basement's now flooded. On St. Patty's Day, somebody fell down a flight of stairs behind me and knocked me over, and I hurt my shoulder. I mean, I'm good. I know everything will be all right, but it's just like the last time I gave a homeless person a ride a couple years back, a bunch of bad stuff happened to me too. And it's like, man, maybe I need to stop doing good things for people. And whatever, I'm not going to make it a big sob story, but literally, I've wanted to post some of these videos and make videos and whatever I don't have the time. I have tons of crap going on, family stuff and whatever. I guess it's probably all meant to be. Everything's supposed to sync up this way for some strange reason, but it's just like, man, next time I see a homeless person, I kind of want to just run them over and go buy a lottery ticket, and I feel like I'll probably win, so who knows, but anyway, if you go back and watch this video, once I put it on there, if you go to about like the 40-minute mark or something, I talk about I've been talking about how I think the 218th episode of the Gematria effect is going to be important. And I finally listened to some of it, and literally the first person who calls in is from Toronto, and they do mention the number 218. And I was like, interesting. She mentioned other numbers, but she did mention the number 218. So when she mentioned 218, I started paying attention to it more. And anyway, within that caller, Zach mentioned a whole bunch of stuff about, how the date 3/6 Toronto turned 187 years old. And that was a big day I was watching for, with some synchronicity with Allen Iverson and so on, and how it synced up to Zach and the number 218 even. And then, of course, this was Zach's 218th Gematria effect episode. And I learned that on 3/6, it was the 187th anniversary of Toronto. And this is absolutely synced up to all of the stuff with the WWE and how Ronda Rousey just turned 34 years old right after the 34th Royal Rumble. And she came into the WWE in 2018 at the Royal Rumble, and her first official match was at WrestleMania 34. And for years I've talked about the number 34 and how Ronda Rousey's connected to Kobe Bryant and the number 34, and Kobe Bryant died on the third month and fourth day of the NBA season last year. And, before WrestleMania 36 and like 3/6. And Toronto was important to the August 11th narrative in 2019 because it held SummerSlam, which was important to this big narrative I was talking about with Hulk Hogan and Earthquake, and how it syncs up to Los Angeles and a bunch of other things. And also at that 2018 Royal Rumble, Japan, both the people who won the Royal Rumble were from Japan. And long story short, you can go watch that other video, but I made this other video talking about how we got a Japan earthquake right after Ronda Rousey turned 34 years old, and I talked about how there's this major connection to Los Angeles with it all, such as, Kobe Bryant's name equals 213 in Gematria, so does Los Angeles. Los Angeles is in the 213 area code. The word earthquake also equals 213. And we get a Japan earthquake on the date 213, which is also the 44th day of the year. The word earthquake also equals 44. But it's all important to these Francis Bacon ciphers. And lo and behold, we just got an earthquake story in Japan again. So we got one on 213. And then we get this other one the day after this volcano that I'm going to talk about here. But look at this, another Japan earthquake on the date 320. And right away it sticks out to me because in these Francis Bacon ciphers, Los Angeles also equals 320. Let me just point it out really quick. Los Angeles, 320, also 213. So we get a Japan earthquake on 213 and then a Japan earthquake on 320. And I've been saying how it's synced up to Los Angeles, how the Toronto Raptors were also important to this narrative, and also just Toronto in general, because it's going to be WrestleMania 37 this year, and Los Angeles equals 37. It was supposed to be held in Los Angeles, and now it's held in Tampa. And this year at the Royal Rumble, Bianca Belair won it, which is synced up to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Because at WrestleMania 37, she's going to fight Sasha Banks. Think about the Fresh Prince, who moved in with the Banks family, right? Philip Banks, Carlton Banks, Vivian Banks, Hillary, so on, right? And the guy who won the Royal Rumble this year was Edge. And Edge just so happens to be billed from Toronto. And he's known for wrestling with the wrestler Christian, who lives in Tampa. And there's this humongous narrative. We have Prince Harry, who's living in Los Angeles, and a whole lot more. It's all synced up to the same narrative that I've been talking about for years. So I'll leave some links in the description. But, it's like, what are the odds? Another Japan earthquake on 320. And I've even mentioned Japan like multiple times in how it was connected to it. Japan equals 185. Right now, Los Angeles is in its 185th year of being called, or being a city. The city status, if you look it up, it's in its 185th year right now until May 23rd. And, Japan equals 185. Ronda Jean Rousey equals 185. Anyway, a few days after I listened to that first caller on here or whatever, I ended up going to bed. Like, I wrote this big long blog post, and I was like, man, that's crazy how it syncs up to Los Angeles and Toronto, this narrative that I've been following for a while. And I went to bed, and it took a few days, and I finally started listening to the Gematria effect again on Friday. So I started this was on Wednesday night, and then on Friday, probably at like 11 in the morning or something, I started listening to the Gematria effect again because I wanted to finish it, and I knew it was probably important to this narrative that I've been following. And the next caller just so happens to be Rambo, and Rambo talks all about Vulcan and volcanoes, and he also talks about a story about an explosion that's connected to this narrative from Ontario, California, which just so happens to be a suburb of Los Angeles. Think about Ontario and Toronto. Think about this connection I've been following with Toronto and Los Angeles. And, keep in mind, like the Raptors, they won the NBA Finals just before Kobe Bryant died, and Kobe Bryant synced up to the Lakers, and Kobe Bryant also scored his 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. All of this stuff that goes back to the August 11th Tisha B'Av narrative. But, what are the odds? Rambo mentions the big thing he's talking about is this explosion in Ontario, California. And it reminded me of some other things too. Like back in December, I was talking about volcanoes with Ed Rod, and he talked about this synchronicity that he had with the numbers 111. It was on December 6th. And he talked about how he had all these syncs with 111. He was talking about volcanoes and Pompeii. And I mentioned that maybe it's synced up to Hawaii because Hawaii equals 111. And remember, in 2018, the same year of the WrestleMania where WrestleMania 34, and when Ronda Rousey made her WWE debut and all that, we had the Hawaiian missile scare, and then 111 days later, we had the Hawaii volcano and earthquake, right? And I was like, this is interesting because it's synced up to that narrative, and Hawaii equals 111, and then, what was it? 12 days later, there was an eruption in Hawaii. What are the odds? It's the first one since 2018. And I pointed out how Korea equals 111. What else did I point out here? pointed out the volcano's name is 129, and Kim Jong-un equals 129. And it was also, both of these things were also synced up to the Great American Eclipse that was on 21/8, the 218 number. But, what were the odds? We're mentioning volcanoes, and then we get a volcano eruption in Hawaii. Queen Elizabeth's dog also died like 5 days before this, and her dog was named Vulcan, and Vulcan is the god of volcanoes and fire, right? He's also the brother to Mars, and Mars, in regards to Rome, Mars is the father of Romulus and Remus, where Rome comes from. It's important to Lupercalia, and Mars is the god of war. So there's some interesting things, and then in let me see here. On January 24th, I had synchronicity with volcanoes in Pompeii. I had came home from work, and I just went to Zach's blog, and I saw this story about, it was like the second post I read, and it was about the guy who got blamed for the ghost ship fire, pled guilty or whatever. Remember the ghost ship fire that happened, and it was synced up to the Golden State Warriors beating the Cleveland Cavaliers and whatever, because it happened in Oakland, and ghost ship equals 122 and Golden State equals 122, and we got that story about this guy on January 22nd this year, and it happened 1 month and 22 days after the anniversary of that ghost ship fire happening, and a whole lot more, like I said, Golden State 122, but I don't know, it just stuck out to me, and I was reading this post, and then what was it? I was reading this post, and I heard my girlfriend and my daughter all of a sudden start talking about Pompeii, and I was like, what are you guys talking about Pompeii for? That's kind of weird. They were watching Scooby-Doo, and What's Up Scooby-Doo or something like that, and there's an episode about Pompeii, and I was like, that's interesting, just in regards to volcanoes, and Ed Rod saying that, like a month back, and so on, and I went to Facebook, and I was looking at my Facebook messages, and Bobby Simpson had sent me this message about the TV show American Gods, and the person named Emily Browning, who equals 218, and the character she plays equals 218. And I just decided to look up this girl again, and when I looked her up, I noticed that it says right in the very beginning of her Wikipedia, if it will load, that she's also famous for the movie Ghost Ship. So she's famous for the movie Ghost Ship, and keep in mind, I'm just reading about this post about Ghost Ship, then my girlfriend starts talking about Pompeii to my daughter, and notice this girl's also in the movie called Pompeii. So she's in Ghost Ship and Pompeii. So I'm going, there must be some type of connection, and even also think about the Ghost Ship fire, think about Vulcan and the god of fire and the god of earthquakes and whatever else. This is the episode of Scooby-Doo. If you can see it. Pompeii and Circumstance. And I pointed out how the film Pompeii, it came out in Buenos Aires on 2/18. And Buenos Aires is where Pope Francis is from, right? So interesting. And it also came out in America on 2/21. And think about Pompeii in regards to Italy and so on, too, with Pope Francis being the Pope and the Vatican and whatever else, right? And just trying to think here. But I pointed out how Pompeii equals 132, just like Catholic Church, and so does Volcano. Volcano equals 35, like Catholic. Pretty sure Vulcan also equals 35. But this coming out in America on 2/21 was interesting because if you went from 2/18 to the Jesuit anniversary, it's 221 days and also 7 months and 9 days. And Mount Vesuvius, the Pompeii basically, right? Mount Vesuvius that erupted, that equals 221. And it just so happened to erupt in the year 79 AD. So 221 and 79, also Society of Jesus, equals 79. This is also important to that August 11th stuff because the ruler Titus, who was the ruler during this time, just so happened to be the one who destroyed the second temple in Jerusalem, right? So Titus was the one who destroyed the second temple, and he was also the ruler during the time of, Mount Vesuvius erupting, which is interesting thinking about how it's synced up to August 11th still, that narrative that we followed with earthquakes and the Golden Gate Bridge and, you know, whatever. But so I was kind of thinking about the date 221, right? 221. And I noticed that that Hawaii also equals 221 and Big Island equals 218. And if you use the special character, the little whatever on this, on the however you say that volcano's name, it also equals 221. So Hawaii 221, this volcano 221, Big Island 218, this big number that I've been kind of like a catalyst for me to understand this stuff. And then Mount Vesuvius 221. So I was like, maybe there's going to be a volcano on 221 or something of the sort. And we did get like the Mount Etna one, but that one wasn't really big in the news. It was just kind of a small news story. But I did point out that if you went from the Hawaii earthquake to the date 218, it was 1 month and 29 days. And remember, Kim Jong-un equaled 129. And this volcano also equals 129. And Big Island in the Francis Bacon gematria equals 129. And we've recently had the death of Van Halen, and this same day I was at work, and for whatever reason I was watching Facebook, or I think it was Facebook, and I kept watching these videos of this kid play Van Halen Eruption, and it was like a different kid every time, and I don't know why. I have no clue why. I saw it and I clicked on it, and then it just kept taking me to other videos of people playing the song Eruption, and I was like, what are the odds of this, right? So they're playing Eruption, and then I come home and have Synchronicity with Pompeii and Volcanoes. And I noticed that Van Halen equals 129. And Van Halen was important to the August 11th stuff that was synced up to the third temple construction, because in the South Park episode called about the ginger cow and the red cow prophecy and so on, in that episode they play the song Hot for Teacher by Van Halen. And in the song, or in the video for Hot for Teacher, they even have a bunch of numbers up on the chalkboard that Bobby Simpson pointed out. And if you do the numbers in reverse gematria, it says holy shit on the chalkboard. But I was just wondering, Van Halen, Eruption, Van Halen 129, this Hawaii thing 129, Big Island 129. This big number, 129, 221. I even pointed out up here, maybe we'll get another Hawaii volcano story soon, or a different volcano. Because I wonder if there's something important to this, right? And I'm just explaining all this because on 3/19 we got another earthquake right after Rambo talks, or another volcano, right after Rambo talks about all this volcano stuff. And it's just interesting because this volcano just so happened to happen 129 days after my birthday, of all days. 129 days after my birthday. And it happened in Reykjavik, Iceland. Reykjavik, with a little special character on it, it equals 129. So Reykjavik 129. And then there's a volcano 129 days after my birthday. And 129 was one of the two big numbers I was talking about in regards to volcanoes, right? How it syncs up. And Van Halen was just big in the news because of his tribute at the Grammys and whatever else, right? And even more interesting with all this is that the night before this happened, I had made that blog post and I was really tired because I made that blog post about Toronto and Los Angeles. Sorry, and right when I closed my eyes, my kid woke up. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But I didn't have to work the next day, so I went and got him regardless, but he wasn't tired at all. So I just let him play some more, and I sat in my chair and I went to Netflix on my TV and I just turned on some random movie that popped up. And it was this movie called Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. And I didn't even think anything of it. It was just a Will Ferrell movie, and I was like, oh, it looks all right, even though I think it was one of the stupidest movies hands down I've ever seen. Especially Will Ferrell, you expect that, but this movie was absolutely, I thought it was terrible. But what I thought was interesting was that I just randomly watched this movie because my son woke up, and he rarely wakes up in the middle of the night, but that night he woke up. And this movie just so happens to be all about Iceland. He's from Iceland, and he's trying to get on this TV show called Eurovision. And literally, like 2 or 3 minutes into the movie, it shows present day, and then he's singing his song called Volcano Man, of all things, right? So the night before a volcano in Iceland, I literally like watched this movie about where he's singing a song called Volcano Man, and it's all about how he's from Iceland trying to get on this show called Eurovision, right? And his band's even called The Story of Fire Saga. And you think about fire and volcanoes. His dad's also Pierce Brosnan, who's also James Bond, something I've talked about a whole lot recently too. But Pierce Brosnan, I remember him a lot from the movie Dante's Peak too, that's about volcanoes and a volcano eruption. So he's also in Mars Attacks, something I documented about last, I don't know what it was, back in July, how Mars Attack was important. Talked about how it was important to, try to think what it was. It was important to Danny DeVito. I didn't even realize that Danny DeVito was in that movie until I looked it up, but Danny DeVito was in that movie. And back when Pop Smoke died, I talked about how Danny DeVito was important to, because he was Penguin and Batman, and Pop Smoke had that song called Christopher Walken. Christopher Walking, and a play on words to Christopher Walken. And Christopher Walken is like another bad guy kind of in that movie. And he has the hat at the Halloween party or whatever, the costume party with the all-seeing eye on his forehead and the triangle and so on. But talked about how it was important to a twin narrative with Danny DeVito. Then we got the George Floyd thing that was all about the twin symbolism. Then in early July, we got the death of one of the actors in the movie Twins that stars Danny DeVito. And then, once again, Danny DeVito was also in the movie Mars Attack with Pierce Brosnan, and there was a whole bunch of stuff with it. But, Danny DeVito is also part of the movie Matilda that I just had a whole bunch of synchronicity with, and they just had a story about, maybe I'll talk about that at the end of the video. But Wikipedia, somebody even went on Wikipedia and changed it and said that Danny DeVito died on February 28th of 2021. And he didn't die, but they did that on purpose. I'm telling you, they changed it back exactly. I'm telling you, I was supposed to notice it. Like, people on Wikipedia, I mean, who's changing Danny DeVito's Wikipedia in 2021? It doesn't make any sense. But if he really did die that day, it would have been absolutely synced up by the numbers too. That's what's crazy about it. But he didn't actually die. But there was a story back in November where there was a story about penguins at the Soldier Field in Chicago getting to walk across the field or something. And I talked about how it was important to the movie Matilda because my daughter had recently just started loving the movie Matilda. And my daughter's name also equals 129, which is interesting. And South Park also equals 129. Think about the ginger cow and stuff. But we recently just right after I made that blog post about Matilda, we got a story about Roald Dahl, however you say that guy's name, the guy who wrote the book Matilda. And it's like he died in 1993, so why in the world, or somewhere in the early 90s, why are we getting a story about him? And it was all synced up by the numbers. And, then we get a story about the actress who plays Matilda in the beginning of March this year. And it was exactly the amount of days away from the post that I made about the movie Matilda synced up to it. So, I mean, just whatever. This stuff happens all the time. And I probably wouldn't even have thought of that if it had nothing to do with it was Penguin and the Batman symbolism. And then my daughter, started loving the movie Matilda out of nowhere. But anyway, let's go back to this. So, yeah, I wake up because of my son who barely ever wakes up in the middle of the night. And I watch this movie where he has a song called Volcano Man. And it's all about Iceland. I don't know. I was saying Iceland a little bit ago. Who knows? Iceland, whatever. But I looked at my son too, And my son's name in Francis Bacon Gematria equals 319. And this volcano happened on the date 319. And he woke up early in the middle of the night on 319, you know? It's like, what are the odds of that? And it was also 165 days before my son's birthday. And my son's name also equals 165. Will Ferrell equals 165. Pompeii equals 165. Yellowstone equals 165. And Wyoming equals 165. And think about the super volcano in Wyoming and at Yellowstone and so on. And if you go back to my post with Ed Rod back in December, I even talked about how something to do with, I was looking at Kevin Costner again. Where in the world is it? I don't know. Let me find it here. That's right, Ed Rod here. Or where in the world? Volcano. It's got to be in here. I'm just... Oh, that's why. I got to keep going. Notice how I even mentioned Yellowstone and all that? That's why I wrote that in there. Yellowstone. I wonder if the horse race is going to be important this year. The Triple Crown or whatever. The Kentucky Derby and all that stuff. Because in 2019... I can't even remember what even happened, who won or whatever. Was it Country House or there was a horse called Tacitus, and he was the guy who basically documented all the stuff from Pompeii, and the jockey who won, his name was Flavian Pratt, and the Titus was part of the Flavian dynasty, and I can't even remember, but it was all synced up to that horse race. Which is once again interesting to Neptune because Neptune is the god of earthquakes, also the god of horses. So, also Prince Philip, and Philip means lover of horses. And, think about Queen Elizabeth's dog Vulcan dying. This earthquake, they also said it happened, I keep saying earthquake, but this volcano also erupted at the Riki Janes Peninsula that equals 319. And it's the first time it erupted in nearly 800 years, So, what are the odds? I mean, just really, that's what I'm talking about, how I'm synced up to these media stories all of the time. Like, 129 days after my birthday at a place that equals 129. And the two main numbers I was talking about with earthquakes, or with volcanoes, oh my God, with volcanoes are synced up to 129 and 221. And then there just so happens to be a big eruption on that day. I had that pulled up a long time ago. Just want to show it. I looked up when 120 or 222 days after my birthday was, and it's 6/19, which is the 170th day of the year. So just interesting. That's a day just an interesting day. I just made that last video. I talked a lot about the number 170 and how it's synced up to Zach and so on, and Myanmar and whatever, a whole bunch of other stuff. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and think about 6192 in regards to LeBron James, and LeBron James just recently got injured too, right around the same time as this. What day did he get injured? The same day as the earthquake in Japan, wasn't it? 320, I believe it was, right? But 619, remember that's King James's real birthday, and the Cavaliers won with LeBron King James on that day in 2016. And that's 619 is the 114th prime number, and LeBron James equals 114, and World War equals 114, and Kim Jong-un equals 114. Think about the Hawaiian missile scare synced up to the North Korean missile scare synced up to the Hawaiian volcano. Think about how they call it the Trump-Kim summit too, which reminds you of like mountains and volcanoes, right? A summit. So it just makes me wonder. It was the deadliest building fire since the 1906 San Francisco earthquakes. The ghost ship fire was, sorry. But I need to rewatch that movie, Ghost Ship. Remember I liked it a long time ago, but what did I write in here? Eddie Van Halen died on 10/6. Really, for a long time, we pointed out stuff with the word prophecy equaling 106, so thought that was interesting. And then, in regards to Van Halen, Sammy Hagar, the other lead singer, had the red hair. And think about Hagar and Hagar the Horrible, the Viking and Iceland, and, the creator of Hagar was born on August 11th, and Sammy Hagar, or Hagar, however you say it, equals 106. David Lee Roth, the other singer in Van Halen, equals 201, that big Jesuit number, also 66, and he's currently 66 years old. So maybe pay attention to some of these guys from Van Halen. Oh, man, there's just so many things going on. Let me see if I can find that Matilda story here. Then I'll end the video, but I even talked about Neptune there, but what day was that? March 5th? Just seeing here. Sorry. March 4th was when this story was. So we got a story of the news about the actress from the movie Matilda. Why Matilda star left Hollywood? Like, pretty interesting, And I talked about how I talked about him in November, and then we got a story about Roald Dahl and his anti-Semitic comments a week and a half later, and that story was 2 months and 24 days after his birthday, and anti-Semitic comments equals 224, and that was a humongous number. I was following back in that time period of November and December, and it just so happens to be that this news story about the girl who plays Matilda came 224 days after her birthday, and I actually blogged about her 125 days after her birthday, and her name equals 125. I also blogged about her again on January 19th, which was 44 days before this story came out, and Matilda also equals 119 in Francis Bacon, but the actress who plays her, Mara Wilson, also equals 44, so, the last time I blogged about her was 44 days before she was in the media, and her name equals 44. And I knew it was synced up to Danny DeVito, and like I said, I looked up Danny DeVito, and his Wikipedia said that he died on 2/28 in Los Angeles, California. And he's also from Neptune Township, New Jersey. He's also in the movie Space Jam, too. Think about LeBron James and Los Angeles and so on, too. He was in the movie Space Jam. But I'm just rereading some of this stuff. I went and looked, I was like, why would someone change Danny DeVito, And it just so happened to be a person named, I don't even know what this says. Send them a tweet and let me know. Or let them know. That equals 125, just like Mara Wilson. Danny DeVito is also in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I forgot that I even wrote that in here, but that's interesting with that Tisha B'Av narrative because clear back in 2015 when I talked about the WWE narrative and how it synced up to Hulk Hogan and the death of Roddy Piper, I talked about and how Hulk Hogan got his revenge against Earthquake in Philadelphia at the Comcast Center, and then on the movie Happy Gilmore when he learns how to putt, the building that falls over looks like the Comcast Center with the black cube on the top that's supposed to represent the New Jerusalem, which is where the third temple will be built. But moral of the story, oh, and he learns to putt on the earthquake golf course, but moral of the story is Roddy Piper was also on a few episodes. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia that I talked about, and it was synced up to Michael Jordan, and the original capital of the country Jordan was called Philadelphia, and then it later got destroyed by earthquakes in the year 106 AD. That's why the word prophecy was so important to 106. Think about the red heifer prophecy and the third temple and a whole lot more. So, plus that the horse symbolism too. If you watch the movie Blade Runner 2049, they have that horse with the date 6/10/21 on the bottom of it, which is Prince Philip's birthday, and Philip means lover of horses. And think about Philip and Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. That's why Hulk Hogan's ribs got broke on the Brother Love show, and he got his revenge against Earthquake. And Hulk Hogan's birthday is August 11th, the same day that can't even remember, the mayor of San Francisco. Can't think of what her name is though. London Breed's birthday is, right? So something I pointed out way before we were talking about the August 11th narrative in Tisha B'Av in 2019 was that London Breed's birthday was 8/11 like Hulk Hogan's, and a whole lot of stuff. I followed that date for a long time, but in regards to San Francisco, because San Francisco, California equals 141, which is the 141st prime number is 811, and Golden Gate Bridge equals 213 as well, just like Earthquake, just like Los Angeles, and Los Angeles in the 213 area code. Plus the Messiah returns through the Golden Gate, right? The Jews believe that the Messiah returns through the Golden Gate. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic here, but Danny DeVito's full name equals 125 too, just like the actress's name in who plays Matilda, right? And he's in the movie Matilda. He's even the guy who wrote the film, I think, or something of the sort. That girl's also in Miracle on 34th Street, 34, and she's going to be 34 years old this year. Think about that number in regards to the WWE. She's a cousin to Ben Shapiro. Supposedly doesn't like him, though. They fixed the Danny DeVito death stuff, and they did it 35 minutes after somebody changed it on the date 3/5. So they did it 35 minutes later on the date 3/5. Mars attack twins. Think about Romulus and Remus and Mars. Romulus raped Rhea Silvia. Or what? Mars raped. I don't even know what I wrote in there, but he's in the movie Hercules. North Korea also equals 125. There's all kinds of stuff going on, but we'll just leave it there. I need to go to bed. I'm honestly really tired, but gotta go to work again. Yay! In a few hours. And then when I get off work, I gotta take my girlfriend's brother to work. Drive an hour and a half or more. Can't wait. I'm too nice of a person. Hopefully the plumber will come and we can get our basement unflooded too. So who knows? But have a good one. Peace.